They were bright, jiggly, and always a little over the top, the sweet finales that lit up every 70s dinner table. But somewhere between fondue pots and disco balls, they disappeared. What happened to the desserts that defined a decade, and why do we still crave them?
7-Up, cake snack packs.
7-Up cake wasn't just a Southern favorite. It made its way into single-serving snack packs during the 1980s. These little foil-wrapped sponge cakes were lemony, lightly carbonated, and ridiculously moist, with that unmistakable citrus zip from real 7-Up in the batter. Sold in grocery stores and vending machines, they were a cross between pound cake and lemon loaf, but lighter and airier. Some versions even had a glaze or a dusting of powdered sugar, while others came plain for dunking in milk. The soda gave it a unique texture, soft, springy, and almost fizzy on the tongue. Eventually, they disappeared, likely due to the novelty wearing off and rising production costs. But 7-Up cake left a mark. It was the dessert that made soda feel classy and cake feel cool. If you ever peeled back that foil and took a bite, you remember the feeling, bubbly, sweet, and one of a kind. It's the snack that made citrus sparkle. Pudding roll-ups. Think fruit roll-ups, but dessert. Pudding roll-ups hit shelves in the mid-1980s as an experimental treat. Flat, chewy sheets with the flavor and creaminess of chocolate pudding, but none of the mess. They came in tightly rolled tubes, wrapped in shiny foil, and unraveled like edible film reels. Chocolate and butterscotch were the most popular, but some brave souls remember vanilla swirl or banana. The texture was odd, thick, slightly sticky, and unlike anything else in your lunchbox. Parents liked that it was mess-free. Kids loved that it was bendable, twistable, and yes, flung across classrooms. But they didn't last. Texture complaints, poor sales, and confused marketing doomed them to extinction. Still, they were one of the decade's boldest snack experiments, a reminder that the 80s weren't afraid to play with food. These were the dessert equivalent of edible Play-Doh. And while they may have disappeared from store shelves, they've never quite left the memory banks of adventurous eaters. Mini teaser after. But if you thought pudding you could unroll was wild, wait until we revisit the frozen candy bar you had to smash, the soda-flavored sherbet, and the pie named after a cartoon alien. Ready Whip shortcake in a can kit. In a move that felt peak 1980s brilliant, Ready Whip once sold a dessert kit that included a mini can of whipped cream, 2 sponge shortcakes, and a foil packet of strawberries in syrup. It came in a plastic dome you could grab right from the fridge section. Instant strawberry shortcake, no mixing, no baking. Kids loved building their own, squirting whipped cream in artistic towers, and soaking every bite in sticky red syrup. It made weeknight desserts feel like a party, and the plastic dome doubled as a bowl. Eventually, it was phased out, probably because the packaging was bulky and the ingredients weren't exactly gourmet. But man, it was a blast. Today's dessert kits are often complicated or overpriced. This one was simple, quick, and just indulgent enough to feel like a treat without much fuss. Ready Whip's shortcake kit made you feel like a dessert chef, with nothing but a nozzle and a spoon. Viennetta ice cream cake. If elegance had a freezer aisle icon, it was Viennetta. This wavy, ridged, show-stopping ice cream cake by Walls and Good Humor looked like it belonged on a silver platter at a dinner party. Yet it was sold right next to popsicles. Thin sheets of chocolate layered between ripples of vanilla ice cream created a crisp, luxurious texture that crunched and melted in perfect harmony. It became a go-to dessert for holidays and fancy nights in, especially when parents wanted to impress guests with minimal effort. But by the late 1990s, Viennetta quietly disappeared from US shelves, though it remained popular in Europe. Many fans still mourn its exit and scour international markets for any sign of its return. Occasionally, limited re-releases stir excitement, but the original 1980s packaging and flavor had a magic of its own. This dessert proved you didn't need to bake to be brilliant. Just slice, serve, and savor sophistication. Peel-a-pop frozen treats. Imagine a dessert you could peel like a banana. That was the joy of the peel-a-pop. Introduced in the late 1980s, these frozen novelties had a chewy outer layer, usually strawberry or banana flavored, that peeled away in strips to reveal creamy vanilla ice cream inside. The experience was part toy, part treat. Kids loved playing with their food, unzipping the colorful fruit-flavored coating and then licking or biting into the cool middle. The packaging made a big deal of the fun factor, showing kids peeling their pops with wild grins. While the ice cream itself was pretty basic, the presentation made it unforgettable. Peel-a-pops didn't last long, possibly due to production costs or the novelty wearing off. But for a few sweet summers, they were the most playful treat in the freezer aisle. Today's ice cream innovations focus on gourmet flavors, but back then, dessert was an interactive adventure, one peel at a time. Do you remember any desserts that were more fun than flavorful? Whether it peeled, popped, fizzed, or glowed, we want to know which treat made you smile before the first bite.
Easy cheesecake spray.
Yes, it was real. In the 1980s, for a brief, wondrous time, cheesecake came in a spray can. Marketed under various novelty brands, Easy Cheesecake Spray offered a whipped, tangy, vaguely cheesecake-flavored mousse you could spray onto graham crackers, cookies, or directly into your mouth, as many did. It came in flavors like strawberry swirl and classic New York style. The texture was closer to whipped topping than real cheesecake, but no one cared. It was dessert on demand, and kids treated it like gold. It disappeared quickly, possibly due to lack of demand, health concerns, or the fact that no one could take cheesecake seriously after it came in an aerosol can. Still, for a brief moment it turned every snack time into a mad scientist dessert lab. And in a world where whipped cheese still exists, why not bring back cheesecake in a can? It was strange. It was fun. It was peak 1980s. Banana flip snack cakes. Before the 90s flooded shelves with frosted cupcakes and chewy bars, there was a lighter, fluffier treat, the banana flip. This crescent-shaped snack cake featured two soft banana sponge layers cradling a thick stripe of vanilla cream. Sold individually in cellophane wrappers, they were moist, sweet, and full of banana flavor that didn't taste artificial. A rarity in prepackaged snacks. The shape made them fun to eat, and the filling had just enough tang to balance the sweet cake. While they originally debuted decades earlier, the banana flip had a resurgence in the 80s thanks to regional bakeries and snack brands who made their own versions. Eventually, demand dwindled, and other shelf-stable treats took their place, sending the flip into snack food history. But for those who remember, nothing else quite captured that nostalgic blend of banana bread and whipped cream filling. It was comfort food in a wrapper, simple, satisfying, and deserving of a sweet comeback. Root beer float, ice cream cups. Root beer plus vanilla ice cream equals perfection. And in the 1980s, someone had the genius idea to pre-mix it into single-serve ice cream cups. These root beer float treats were layered, creamy vanilla on one side, root beer-flavored ice cream on the other, sometimes topped with a swirl or fizzy syrup. The result was smooth, nostalgic, and just a little bit fizzy on the tongue. Sold mostly in regional brands or during limited-time summer promotions, they never quite broke into the mainstream. But those who found them? Lifelong fans. The taste transported you straight to drive-in diners and soda fountains, but with no mess and no melted soda at the bottom. Eventually, they disappeared. Too niche, too quirky. But few flavors capture summer as perfectly as root beer and vanilla, and few desserts have made it so effortless to enjoy that combo, spoon in hand, anywhere you pleased. Did you ever try root beer float flavored desserts? Or do you remember mixing soda and ice cream at home? Tell us your favorite retro float memories. We're all ears and taste buds. Cream-filled fudge bars by Good Humor. Long before premium ice cream bars became the norm, Good Humor's cream-filled fudge bars delivered unbeatable richness on a stick. The outer shell was firm, deep chocolate fudge, and inside, a cold, creamy vanilla core that balanced every bite. You didn't bite it all at once. You let the outside melt just enough before getting to the soft, dreamy center. It was the kind of treat you begged for at the neighborhood pool or ice cream truck stop. They weren't flashy, but they had that old-school charm, rich taste, simple ingredients, and serious satisfaction. Eventually, they vanished in favor of trendier treats and healthier options. But for those who remember, these fudge bars were summer's signature taste. One bar could silence a group of rowdy kids, and even parents would sneak one from the box. They may be gone from shelves, but they're still frozen in our memories, one creamy bite at a time. Up next, a dessert shaped like zoo animals, the ultimate chocolate swirl cup, and a flavor that turned root beer into a frozen masterpiece. Ready for more? Let's keep scooping. Sour Freeze Pops. Before warheads ruled the 1990s, the original Sour Fix came from Sour Freeze Pops, brightly colored plastic tubes filled with face-puckering fruit syrup that you froze at home. Flavors like green apple zap, cherry shock, and lemon blast were tangy, tart, and tongue-tingling. Kids dared each other to finish one without making a sour face, and some even mixed two together for a nuclear combo. You could find them in bulk at convenience stores or tucked behind the counter at roller rinks. Unlike regular freeze pops, these had a strong vinegar citrus kick that lingered. By the early 90s, they vanished, likely overtaken by neon slushies, soda-fueled treats, and new candy competition. But ask any Gen Xer with a love of sour, and they'll tell you, nothing hit quite like that icy sting of a Sour Freeze Pop. It didn't just cool you down, it woke you up, blew out your taste buds, and made summer a little more extreme. What was the most extreme or unusual dessert you dared to try in the 1980s? Sour Pops, bubblegum ice cream, or something even wilder? Share your best and weirdest memories with us. Whipped chocolate bars, like milkshake in a wrapper. For a brief but glorious run, the 80s saw a wave of whipped chocolate bars, lighter than fudge, creamier than nougat, and melt-in-your-mouth smooth. Brands like Milky Way Light or Mars Whip offered bars that felt like eating a chilled milkshake in candy form. The inside was airy, almost mousse-like, and surrounded by a soft milk chocolate coating. Some versions came with hints of caramel or malted flavor, mimicking a soda fountain dessert. These bars were marketed as a lighter option, less dense than standard candy, but still indulgent. Kids loved how they melted quickly and required slow savoring to enjoy fully. Eventually, the trend faded, maybe due to competition, shelf life issues, or shifting tastes. But they left behind a creamy, nostalgic hole in the candy aisle. They weren't energy bars, they weren't fudge. They were their own delicious thing. Bring one back today and we bet it'd float right off the shelf. Chocolate chip cookie dunkers, Dunkin' cookies. Before Dunkaroos took over the schoolyard, there was another dippable sensation: chocolate chip cookie dunkers. These mini chocolate chip cookies came with a cup of thick sweet chocolate fudge dip in plastic 2-compartment trays. The cookies were crunchy, the dip was gooey, and the pairing was dessert dynamite. Sold mostly in vending machines, convenience stores, and lunchbox snack packs, they were marketed as cooler than regular cookies and more fun than candy. You dipped, swirled, stacked, and sometimes just licked the dip straight from the tray when the cookies ran out. Unlike Dunkaroos' frosting, this dip was chocolate forward, with a texture closer to brownie batter. They were a hit for a few years, especially among older kids and teens, but by the early 90s, newer snacks and cost-cutting measures phased them out. Still, nothing hit quite like that first dunk into rich chocolate heaven. Today's snack packs could learn a thing or two from the sweet, simple power of cookie dunkers. Gel, this layered miracle of a dessert, was like edible magic. You'd mix one packet, chill it, and voila! It's separated into 3 distinct textures: a dense base, creamy middle, and foamy top. Launched by Jell-O in 1969, it peaked in the 1980s when kids would beg for it after dinner, and moms loved it for its fancy but foolproof flair. It came in classic flavors like cherry, orange, and even chocolate, and felt like a culinary science experiment that actually worked. It was served in glass goblets to show off the layers, often topped with whipped cream and sprinkles. But by the mid-1990s, it disappeared from shelves, possibly due to changing tastes, ingredient concerns, or the rise of faster options. Still, Jell-O 1, 2, 3 was a staple of birthday parties and sleepovers. One spoonful, and you were in another world. This one truly deserves a comeback, layered, Lovely and oh so 80s, Skippy peanut butter snack bars. In the late 80s, Skippy, yes, the peanut butter brand, launched a line of snack bars that were part candy, part energy boost, and all delicious. Each bar featured a chewy peanut butter center, sometimes with crisped rice or oats coated in a light layer of chocolate. They weren't quite granola bars, and not quite candy bars either, just sweet enough to feel like dessert, but hearty enough to pass as an after-school snack. Wrapped in bright red foil with Skippy's logo, they felt like a fun extension of something familiar. They were perfect for lunchboxes or hidden in mom's purse for emergencies. Eventually, the line was phased out, likely due to competition from growing granola and protein bar brands. But these Skippy treats filled a nostalgic void, the peanut butter dessert that didn't drip, melt, or demand a spoon. Just unwrap and enjoy, and honestly, no bar since has captured that perfect peanutty middle ground. Ambrosia salad with colored marshmallows. No 1980s potluck was complete without a bowl of ambrosia salad. And not just any version, but the one with fruit cocktail, coconut, and pastel-colored mini marshmallows. This chilled, fluffy concoction blurred the line between salad and dessert. Held together by Cool Whip or sour cream, sometimes both, it was sweet, tangy, and chewy all at once. While the dish itself originated decades earlier, it experienced a huge revival in the 1980s, especially among church potlucks, family reunions, and community picnics. Kids often scooped up the pink and green marshmallows first, while adults claimed it was refreshing. Over time, ambrosia fell out of favor, partly due to its cloying sweetness, partly because nobody really understood what it was supposed to be. But for those who remember it, the salad was pure nostalgia in a Tupperware bowl. It wasn't health food, it wasn't fancy, it was fun, colorful, and always gone by the end of the party. Frankenberry cake squares. Sure, Frankenberry ruled the cereal aisle, but did you know it once made its way into the dessert aisle too? In the late 80s, General Mills launched limited edition Frankenberry cake squares. Pink strawberry-flavored snack cakes with sweet cream filling, often packaged with spooky-themed artwork. They were like Hostess cakes, but dyed in electric pink and blasted with berry flavor. Some even had marshmallow bits baked in, mirroring the cereal's texture. Parents were skeptical, but kids were obsessed, especially around Halloween. They vanished quickly, likely due to low sales or changing marketing focus. Today, cereal-themed snacks are everywhere, but nothing hit quite like these monstrous treats. If you were lucky enough to find a pack in your lunchbox or at a slumber party, you felt like you'd won the dessert lottery. Sugary? Yes. Over the top? Absolutely. But for a spooky pink moment in time, dessert was ruled by a berry-loving cartoon vampire. Frozen cola cups. In the scorching summers of the 1980s, nothing hit like frozen cola cups. Those plastic ridged freezer cups filled with frozen cola slush. Sold at school snack bars, Little League concessions, and corner stores, they came in Coca-Cola, RC, or generic cola flavors. You could peel the paper lid, dig in with a spoon, or bite the cup and sip it like a slushie. Either way, it was cold, fizzy, and packed a punch of syrupy sweetness. Parents might have scoffed at the sugar, but for kids, it was heaven in a cup. The frozen edges were icy and crisp, while the center stayed soft and slushy. Some even froze them at home using leftover soda and Dixie cups. Eventually, better packaging and the rise of mass-market slushie machines pushed these simple delights aside. But those who remember know, there was nothing quite like that sticky, fizz-filled joy of a cola cup half melted in your hand. Jell-O pudding art packs. For a brief moment in the 1980s, playing with your food was encouraged, thanks to Jell-O pudding art packs. These novelty pudding cups came with edible ink in the form of squeeze tubes filled with colorful, fruit-flavored gel. Kids could draw faces, write messages, or make weird little monsters directly on top of their vanilla or chocolate pudding. It was the lunchbox equivalent of edible finger painting. The pudding itself was classic Jell-O, but the ability to customize your snack, that made it unforgettable. Parents were wary, hello stained fingers and tables, and teachers weren't thrilled when kids started decorating their pudding instead of eating it. Still, for a glorious year or two, it was the dessert you could draw on, and it was awesome. Eventually, it was phased out. Too messy, too niche, but not forgotten. Those who remember it still smile at the thought of spelling "I Mom" in gooey red letters across a pudding cup lid. Childhood, sealed in foil. It was Jell-O 1, 2, 3. One of the most mesmerizing desserts of the 1980s was Jell-O 1, 2, 3, a 3-layer gelatin dream made from a single mix. You'd blend the powder with boiling water, whip it, and refrigerate. Then watch as it magically separated into 3 distinct layers: a clear bottom gelatin, a middle mousse-like layer, and a fluffy, creamy top. It was equal parts science experiment and dessert masterpiece. It came in fruity flavors like cherry, strawberry, and orange, and every family had a secret method for getting perfect separation. Jell-O 1, 2, 3 was an ideal weekend project, often made the day before a party or Sunday dinner. Kids marveled at how it transformed in the fridge like edible magic. Sadly, it was discontinued in the mid-90s due to declining sales and changing dessert trends. But for those who remember, it was more than Jell-O. It was a dessert with drama, layers, and childhood wonder. A spoonful of 1, 2, 3 was like diving into dessert time travel. Jell-O Gelatin Pops. Take a Jell-O cup, put it on a stick, and freeze it. That was the genius of Jell-O Gelatin Pops. A short-lived but unforgettable frozen treat from the 1980s. These weren't pudding pops. They were translucent, jiggly, and brightly colored, like edible stained glass. Cherry, lime, and orange were the fan favorites, and each bite gave you the cool snap of a popsicle mixed with the slippery wobble of gelatin. Parents liked them because they weren't too messy. Kids loved them because they were weird in the best way. They disappeared from freezers by the early 90s, possibly because they were too quirky, too niche, or maybe just too jiggly for the mainstream. But for those who remember, Jell-O Gelatin Pops were summer magic on a stick. You didn't just eat them, you wobbled them, poked them, giggled at them, and every single bite was like tasting a science experiment that had gone delightfully right. Pink lemonade pie. It was neon. It was sweet. And it was the definition of a summer cookout dessert. Pink lemonade pie was a no-bake wonder that ruled the 1980s picnic circuit. Made with frozen pink lemonade concentrate, whipped topping, and sweetened condensed milk, all piled into a graham cracker crust. It was a cold slice of pastel heaven. Some versions added Cool Whip swirls or maraschino cherries for flair. The tart citrus zing balanced the sweetness perfectly, making it feel light even after burgers and baked beans. Moms loved how easy it was. No oven, minimal cleanup, and the recipe was usually taped to the fridge or tucked inside a church cookbook. But over time, more decadent, Instagram-worthy desserts took its place. Maybe it was too simple or too kitschy. Still, no lemon bar or cupcake ever hit quite the same nostalgic nerve. This pie deserves a comeback, not just for its taste, but for what it symbolized. Cheerful, crowd-pleasing simplicity. Did your family ever make pink lemonade pie or another no-bake classic? Let us know which retro desserts you'd love to see return to your summer table. But we're just getting warmed up. Next, we're diving into microwavable cakes, neon-colored yogurts, and a pie so pink it practically glowed. Get ready for more forgotten sweetness. Betty Crocker, microwave mug, cake mix. Long before TikTok made mug cakes trendy, Betty Crocker had already perfected the concept in the 1980s. Their microwave mug cake mix came in individual packets, ready to pour into a coffee mug, zap for a minute or two, and voila, a piping hot cake just for you. Flavors like chocolate fudge, vanilla sprinkle, and even cinnamon swirl gave kids their own personal dessert experience without mom having to bake a whole sheet cake. The joy came not just from the gooey center or steam rising out of your favorite Garfield mug. It was the independence, the fun, the magic of the microwave. Eventually, the novelty wore off. Competing products, changing kitchen habits, and shelf space costs led to its quiet phase-out in the 90s. But ask any 80s kid about making cake in the microwave and watch their eyes light up. These little cakes weren't just convenient. They were personal, piping hot, and pure instant joy in a mug. Ghostbusters Slimer Pudding. Launched during the peak of Ghostbusters mania, Slimer Pudding was one of the weirdest, most brilliant dessert tie-ins of the decade. Packaged in green and purple plastic cups, this pudding was supposed to resemble the ectoplasmic slime of the franchise's most mischievous ghost. The flavor? Somewhere between lime, vanilla, and bubblegum, though no one could quite explain it. The real thrill was the color, neon green, with occasional candy slime chunks or sprinkles inside. It was a limited time release, often sold in packs that came with stickers or collectible ghost toys. Kids loved it, parents didn't, and nutritionists cried. But for a glorious moment, dessert was radioactive and fun. Today, Slimer Pudding is a cult memory, mentioned on fan forums and nostalgic snack lists. It was weird, messy, and impossible to replicate, but unforgettable. And honestly, the world could use a little more green pudding and ghost-shaped joy. Animal-shaped ice cream sandwiches. Think ice cream sandwiches. Now shape them like lions, giraffes, and elephants. That was the charm of animal-shaped ice cream sandwiches, a 1980s novelty treat that turned dessert into a game. The cookie exterior was chocolatey and soft, while the inside was either vanilla, strawberry, or sometimes even bubblegum-flavored ice cream. Kids would carefully eat around the edges, trying not to hurt the animal, at least for the first few bites. The packaging was colorful and zoo-themed, and some came with animal facts or collectible stickers. Eventually, the complexity of the shapes made them expensive to produce, and they melted fast, especially the ears and tails. Still, they were more than just a sweet. They were imaginative, playful, and a little wild. Today's ice cream sandwiches may be cleaner and neater, but none bring the smile that comes from biting into a lion's mane or a polar bear's paw. Animal-shaped desserts? Absolutely worth reviving. Ride-on frosted cookies. Yes, you read that right. Cookies you could write on. In the mid-80s, several brands released sugar cookies with a firm white icing surface and included edible ink pens or colorful icing tubes. Kids were encouraged to decorate, doodle, or write messages before eating them. Birthday greetings, school notes, or even silly faces. They were sold in novelty gift packs and sometimes even popped up in lunch boxes as surprise treats. The cookie itself was basic, a classic crunchy sugar base. But the real fun was the creative twist. You didn't just eat dessert, you made it personal. Eventually, decorating cookies became a holiday activity rather than an everyday option, and these write-on versions disappeared from shelves. But for 80s kids, they were a perfect blend of craft time and snack time. They didn't just taste like sweetness, they tasted like self-expression, childhood pride, and one bite-sized masterpiece at a time. Which dessert gave you more joy? The ones you could decorate, or the ones that surprised you with hidden fillings? Let us know your favorite interactive treat from the 80s. Corn Pops Marshmallow Treats. Long before Rice Krispies monopolized the treat game, there was a moment when Corn Pops Marshmallow Treats gave them a serious run for their money. These no-bake squares used Kellogg's Corn Pops cereal, mini marshmallows, and a dash of butter, resulting in a golden glossy bar that was crisp on the outside and gooey in the middle. Unlike their Snap Crackle cousins, Corn Pops added a subtle honeyed crunch that made the whole thing taste richer and slightly caramelized. Some versions even mixed in chocolate chips or drizzled fudge over the top. These treats showed up at class parties, bake sales, and kitchen counters all over suburbia. But as trends leaned toward healthier snacks, and Corn Pops shifted in formula, this dessert quietly disappeared from potluck tables. Still, those who tasted them remember that first bite, a sticky, chewy, crispy delight. It was childhood energy in a bar, and a forgotten treasure we'd happily unwrap again. Engagement question after. Which cereal-based treat ruled your lunchbox or bake sale table back in the day? Was it Corn Pops, Fruity Pebbles, or another sugar-loaded square? Share your favorites. We're all ears of corn. Whip and Chill Mousse Dessert Mix. Imagine mousse that came in a pouch, whipped up in minutes and tasted like chocolate clouds. That was Whip and Chill, a 1980s boxed dessert mix that made mousse easy and almost elegant. Flavors like chocolate, vanilla, and butterscotch gave it range, but chocolate reigned supreme. It came in slim packets, mixed with cold milk, and fluffed up after a short chill in the fridge. The final result? Light, airy, and surprisingly rich for something so simple. It wasn't just a dessert. It was a weeknight miracle. Some moms even used it as a pie filling or layered it with cookies and whipped cream. But as mousse fell out of fashion and pudding took over, Whip and Chill quietly disappeared. Today, mousse is back, but fancier, more technical, and less instant. Still, Whip and Chill was the working parent's secret weapon, and a sweet reminder that you didn't need a pastry degree to whip up something magical in 5 minutes flat. Jell-O glow-in-the-dark gelatin. Yes, this was a real thing. In the late 80s, Jell-O briefly introduced a glow-in-the-dark gelatin that lit up under blacklight. Aimed squarely at birthday parties and Halloween bashes, it was typically lemon lime or berry flavored, but the real draw wasn't taste. It was the glow. The secret? A touch of quinine, like in tonic water, or added ingredients that reacted under UV light, creating an eerie neon shine. It came with special packaging and party ideas, encouraging parents to dim the lights and watch dessert glow. While kids loved the sci-fi vibe, parents worried about additives, and the novelty wore off. It was pulled quietly from shelves before the 90s took hold. Still, for one short, glowing season, kids got to eat something that looked radioactive, and loved every second of it. The glow may have faded, but the memory still shines bright. And honestly, who wouldn't want to see dessert glow again? And next, a marshmallow salad no one questioned, a shortcake in a can, and a breakfast cereal that somehow made it onto dessert tables. Keebler Magic Middles, with chocolate centers. No list of forgotten desserts is complete without Keebler Magic Middles, those buttery shortbread cookies with soft, melty chocolate hidden inside. Introduced in the 1980s, these cookies looked plain on the outside but oozed warm fudge when bitten into, especially if you microwaved them for a few seconds. They felt magical, hence the name, and were a massive hit with kids and adults alike. Keebler even released limited edition versions with peanut butter or caramel fillings, but the chocolate original remained the gold standard. Lunchboxes, cookie jars, and after-school snacks were never the same. Then heartbreak. They vanished from shelves by the mid-2000s with no explanation. Fans begged for their return, but Keebler stayed quiet until a short-lived revival that didn't quite capture the original. Magic Middles were the cookie equivalent of a hidden treasure chest, simple on the outside, rich and decadent on the inside. If they returned today, they'd sell out in minutes. No exaggeration.
A pudding-filled donuts from the grocery bakery.
Long before gourmet donuts became trendy, grocery store bakeries in the 80s offered pudding-filled donuts that felt like decadent, secret desserts. These weren't your standard cream-filled fare. Inside each pillowy donut was cold, thick chocolate or vanilla pudding, surrounded by powdered sugar or a shiny glaze. The first bite always came as a surprise, soft, sweet bread giving way to that creamy, cool center. Sometimes the filling oozed out with a glorious mess. They sat in paper boxes in the bakery section, sometimes labeled Bavarian cream or simply filled donut, and they cost next to nothing. You could grab a dozen and feel like you'd brought home a feast. Today's bakery cases lean fancier, and pudding fillings are harder to find. But these simple, sweet bombs of joy were an underappreciated classic. A donut that doubled as dessert? That's the kind of multitasking every child and grown-up could get behind. Yoplait custard-style yogurt in the glass jar. Before Greek yogurt took over grocery shelves, Yoplait had a rich, velvety version that felt like dessert and came in a distinctive glass jar. Yes, a real glass jar. Custard-style Yoplait in the 1980s was creamier than the fruity varieties that followed, and it had a depth of flavor that made it taste more like pudding than health food. Vanilla, strawberry, and lemon were the big three, and each was topped with a satisfying foil seal that made opening it feel just a bit elegant. The jar often got repurposed to hold buttons, beads, or pennies. Why did it vanish? Glass was expensive to ship and produce, and the market shifted toward squeezable on-the-go options. But ask any kid from that era, and they'll say it was the only yogurt that felt truly luxurious. Creamy, cool, and quietly indulgent, it was the yogurt you didn't rush. You savored it with a spoon, and maybe a little bit of ceremony. Up next, chocolate pudding in a can, pudding you could spray, and the one-boxed mix that turned every birthday into a sprinkle-filled celebration. Don't close that recipe box yet.
Snack pack chocolate pudding cans. Metal, not plastic.
Before plastic cups took over lunchboxes, snack pack pudding came in tiny metal cans, complete with sharp-edged lids you had to carefully peel back. Introduced in the 1970s, but beloved through the 80s, these chocolate puddings were cool, rich, and just the right size for an after-school treat. You could eat them straight out of the can with a metal spoon, or, if you were fancy, chill them for a thicker, denser texture. The metal cans gave the pudding a nostalgic coolness, literally and emotionally. By the 90s, concerns over safety and cost led to a full switch to plastic. Functional, yes. Memorable? Not so much. There was something oddly satisfying about the thwip of peeling that metal lid, and the way the cold steel rim felt in your hand. Kids today might never know the thrill of dangerously sharp dessert packaging, but for those of us who do, the memory of canned pudding is sealed forever in flavor and time. Rainbow chip frosting tub cakes. If your childhood included a birthday in the 80s, chances are you saw or requested a rainbow chip frosting cake, frosted straight from the legendary tub. Betty Crocker's rainbow chip frosting wasn't just icing, it was a cultural event. A rich vanilla base packed with colorful confetti chips that melted slightly when spread over warm cake. Unlike sprinkles, these chips stayed soft and added a chewy texture that made every bite a party. Paired with funfetti cake mix, it became the go-to dessert for birthdays, slumber parties, and bake sales. Some families even spooned it straight from the container. No shame. While it disappeared for a while in the 2000s, fan petitions brought it back, but never quite with the same retro packaging or flair. In the 80s, this frosting didn't just top desserts, it became one. One tub turned boxed cake into pure joy, and every colorful bite said, "You're the guest of honor, even on an ordinary Tuesday."
Chocolate turtle pie, store-bought freezer version.
In the 1980s, there was one frozen pie that stood out in every supermarket freezer. Chocolate turtle pie. Sold by brands like Sara Lee or local store brands, this pie was built like a candy bar. Chocolate cookie crust, creamy caramel filling, a thick layer of chocolate mousse, and chopped pecans or walnuts on top. Sometimes there was a swirl of whipped topping or a caramel drizzle. But the real win was the combo. Rich, salty, creamy, and crunchy in every bite. It wasn't homemade, but it tasted like a restaurant dessert, and every slice felt indulgent. Parents kept one hidden in the freezer for guests, but somehow it kept shrinking. By the early 90s, trends moved toward low-fat and no-sugar desserts, and the original version quietly vanished. But those who grew up with it remember it well, served half-frozen, with forks scraped clean. Chocolate turtle pie was 1980s freezer royalty, and its comeback would be a dream come true.
Chocolate swirl pudding cups by Swiss Miss.
Before dual-compartment yogurt got trendy, Swiss Miss chocolate swirl pudding cups delivered visual and flavorful fun. Half vanilla, half chocolate, and always perfectly marbled, these pudding cups were creamy, rich, and just slightly firmer than Jell-O's classic version. You could mix them together with a spoon or keep each flavor separate depending on your mood. Some even tried to paint with the swirls, making designs before devouring it in big, satisfying bites. What made them memorable wasn't just the taste. It was the perfect balance of sweetness, the satiny texture, and the fun of watching chocolate and vanilla become best friends in a cup. These pudding cups were a staple in lunchboxes, after-school snacks, and late-night fridge raids. But as gelatin snacks and low-fat trends took over, the swirl cups quietly faded away. Today's pudding lacks the same flair. Bring back the swirl, and you bring back a dessert that understood the joy of contrast.
and simplicity.
Teddy Grahams dessert packs. In the late 80s, Teddy Grahams weren't just cookies. They became build-your-own dessert packs. Think of them like the proto version of today's snack dippers. You'd get a small tray with honey or chocolate Teddy Grahams and a creamy dip on the side, usually frosting, chocolate spread, or marshmallow fluff. Kids dunked, piled, and sometimes just scooped the frosting straight with a bear-shaped cookie. It was sugary, sticky, and a little chaotic. Everything a kid could ask for. Lunchboxes with these dessert packs became instant trading gold. Over time, the concept morphed into other snack products, and Teddy Grahams returned to being just cookies. But this dessert version? It was the ultimate playground status symbol. Combining cuteness, crunch, and sugar? That's 1980s genius right there. It wasn't just a snack, it was an activity. And honestly, we'd still buy them by the dozen if they made a comeback today. Which snack pack dessert was your favorite in the 80s? Dunker's Teddy Grahams or something even more forgotten? Tell us what you miss most from your lunchbox days. Push-Up Pops, sherbet style by Flintstones. Bright orange sherbet, a cardboard cylinder, and a plastic stick that pushed your treat higher with every bite. That was the magic of Flintstones Push-Up Pops in the 1980s. Wrapped in bright cartoon graphics and packed with zingy orange flavor, these sherbet pops were the ultimate summertime cool-down. You didn't lick them. You twisted and pushed and hoped it wouldn't collapse halfway through. The taste was a burst of creamsicle sunshine, and the Flintstones branding made it feel like prehistoric fun. They'd sometimes leak, melt too fast, or get stuck. But that was part of the game. Ice cream trucks and grocery freezers couldn't keep them stocked fast enough. Eventually, cleaner packaging and evolving trends pushed the push-up pop aside, but it made a comeback now and then. Still, nothing quite matches the joy of that slow sherbet climb, the way it stuck to your fingers, or the taste of Saturday afternoons frozen into one nostalgic tube.
Orange Crush Sherbet Cups. Bright, citrusy, and borderline fluorescent, Orange Crush Sherbet Cups were a soda lover's dream dessert. These little tubs of neon orange sherbet were modeled after the popular soda brand and packed with fizzy flavor that somehow mimicked carbonation. With peel-back foil tops and tiny wooden spoons tucked under the lid, they were a staple at pool parties, summer camps, and school carnivals. The taste was sweet, tangy, and just shy of overwhelming, perfect for cooling down under the sun. Some versions were even swirled with vanilla, mimicking a creamsicle float. Eventually, as sherbet's popularity waned and frozen novelty brands shifted focus to ice cream bars, these zesty cups melted into memory. But few treats embodied summer in a spoon quite like Orange Crush Sherbet. It wasn't fancy, but it was unforgettable. If you ever licked the last orange streak from the bottom of the cup, you know. This was sunshine you could eat, spooned straight from the freezer with sticky, smiling fingers. Freeze-dried ice cream. Before astronaut food became a museum gimmick, freeze-dried ice cream, aka space snacks, was a legit dessert trend for curious 80s kids. Found in science kits, toy stores, and novelty shops, it came in foil packets labeled astronaut ice cream and included chalky, crumbly squares in flavors like Neapolitan, chocolate, or vanilla. It didn't need refrigeration, it didn't melt, and it looked like food from another planet. The texture was strange, dry and crumbly at first, but it melted in your mouth like magic. It wasn't necessarily delicious, but it was fun, and eating it made you feel like you were floating on a space station. NASA may not have endorsed most commercial versions, but that didn't stop kids from pretending. Eventually, trends shifted toward fresher, more realistic treats, and freeze-dried dessert faded into novelty status. Still, for one shining decade, dessert went intergalactic, and every bite was a mission to the stars, one crumb at a time. Pudding Pops. They weren't just frozen pudding, they were a cultural phenomenon. Jell-O pudding pops burst onto the scene in the early 1980s with creamy texture, rich flavors, and commercials that made you beg your parents during every grocery trip. Vanilla, chocolate, and swirl were the classics, and each bite was smooth, cold, and melt in your mouth perfect. Unlike standard popsicles,
They felt indulgent, almost luxurious, but were somehow still lunchbox friendly. Bill Cosby's infamous ad campaign made them iconic, but even without the star power, the taste stood on its own. Why did they disappear? By the late 90s, Kraft pulled them due to slumping sales and rising production costs. Store brand imitations never quite nailed the texture. Today's freezer section is full of ice cream novelties, but none hit the nostalgia nerve like pudding pops. They weren't flashy, they were simply satisfying. And they made every kid feel like dessert royalty with a frozen stick of chocolate bliss. Domino's Chocolate Lava Crunch Cake, test version. Before Domino's made it a menu staple in the 2000s, they secretly tested a version of chocolate lava crunch cake in the late 80s. This dessert was a small, crispy-edged chocolate cake with a gooey molten center, packaged in foil trays and delivered warm in pizza boxes. It wasn't widely advertised, just an add-on offered to lucky customers during early pilot runs. Those who tried it swore it was like finding buried treasure, warm, dense, and sinfully rich. Sadly, it was shelved quickly, likely due to logistical issues with delivery and inconsistent texture. But those who tasted the original still remember it as a hidden gem. Before lava cake was trendy, it was the kind of thing you stumbled on once and searched for ever since. Decades later, Domino's revived it. New recipe, new era. But the OG 1980s test version? That was pure melty magic, delivered right to your door with a side of nostalgia.
Bar None Candy Bar, Frozen Edition.
The Bar None candy bar was already a standout. A layered mix of chocolate wafers, fudge, peanuts, and a thick chocolate coating. But in the 1980s, some households took it to the next level by keeping it in the freezer. Frozen Bar None became an underground dessert hack. Harder crunch, slower melt, and intensified cocoa flavor. It wasn't sold that way, but kids in the know swore by it. The bar itself was Hershey's answer to Europe's layered chocolate bars, but with an American twist. Bigger, bolder, richer. It gained a cult following, and then was discontinued in the early 90s to make room for reformulated versions that never matched the original. Bar None disappeared, leaving fans craving its crunchy decadence. Today, you can still find copycats or vintage versions online, but nothing compares to the satisfying snap of biting into a frozen Bar None after school. It was the kind of secret dessert you shared with siblings and mourned when the box finally ran out. Bubblegum ice cream. It was pink, it was sweet, and it was full of real bubblegum pieces you'd fish out with a spoon and save for after. Bubblegum ice cream exploded in the 1980s, especially in roller rinks and birthday party parlors. Usually made with a cotton candy base or artificial tutti frutti flavor, the ice cream was sugary, smooth, and neon bright. Buried inside were chewy gumballs, either whole or chopped, that froze your teeth but delighted your inner child. It wasn't practical, and it certainly wasn't dentist approved, but that was the point. Eventually, more sophisticated dessert trends and dental warnings pushed it off the map. But if you ever worked your way through a bowl of bubblegum ice cream and saved the chewed wad for the final chew, you were living your best 80s dessert life. It was a treat that felt like breaking the rules, with color, crunch, and a bonus prize in every bite. Coming up, a pudding you could draw on, a dessert that glowed in the dark, and the frozen treat that somehow turned sour into sweet perfection. You won't believe what's next. Jell-O Pudding Pops, original recipe. There is perhaps no more iconic 80s freezer treat than Jell-O Pudding Pops. Endorsed by Bill Cosby in countless TV ads, these creamy frozen bars were thicker than ice cream, smoother than fudge pops, and came in chocolate, vanilla, and swirl. What made them special was the texture. Firm, yet with that melt-in-your-mouth softness that felt like chilled pudding on a stick. The swirl flavor was a favorite. Chocolate and vanilla twisted together in perfect harmony. Kids fought over the last one in the box. Parents pretended not to like them, but always snuck one after dinner. Sadly, by the mid-1990s, they were discontinued. A short-lived reboot failed to capture the original recipe's magic. For 80s kids, no frozen dessert comes close to replacing that cool, creamy pop that seemed to make the whole summer better. You didn't just eat pudding pops, you worshipped them. Did you love Jell-O pudding pops as much as we did? Chocolate, vanilla, or swirl? What was your go-to flavor? And what freezer treat do you wish would make a comeback? Duncan Hines Sprinkle Layer Cake Mix. If your birthday in the 1980s included a Duncan Hines Sprinkle Layer cake, you were royalty for a day. These boxed cake mixes came with everything: yellow cake base, rainbow sprinkles, frosting packets, and even decorations printed on the box you could cut out and tape to toothpicks. The magic? When you sliced into the cake, it was a confetti explosion inside. Tiny specks of joy baked right into every bite. Moms loved it because it looked impressive with very little work. Kids loved it because it was a party in every slice. By the late 90s, the mix vanished as more custom cakes became the norm. But the boxed version had a unique magic. A birthday cake you made yourself, with sprinkles that didn't sink, and icing that came in a tub labeled fun. Today's cakes are taller, fancier, and far more expensive. But that Duncan Hines mix? It baked joy into the middle of every bite. Mini teaser after Gile. The next round includes a dessert you sprayed from a can, a pie shaped like Pac-Man, and a candy you had to freeze before you could even bite. Stay hungry. Neapolitan ice cream sandwiches. Why settle for one flavor when you could have three? That was the magic of the Neapolitan ice cream sandwich, a frozen treat layered with vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry between two soft chocolate wafers. In the 1980s, these tri-flavored sandwiches popped up in school cafeterias, corner stores, and ice cream trucks. Kids would eat them in stripes, carefully nibbling one flavor at a time, or smash all three into one glorious bite. The sandwich was a nostalgic nod to the Neapolitan tubs in Grandma's freezer, but with a handheld twist. The wafers stuck to your fingers and your face, and the strawberry stripe always felt like a small victory. By the 90s, these began disappearing, replaced by novelty bars and character-shaped popsicles. But for kids of the 80s, this dessert was harmony in layers. Today's ice cream sandwiches stick to basics. But once upon a time, three flavors ruled the freezer in perfect balance. Ice cream cone cereal treats. The 80s were full of cereal-based desserts, but few were as odd and delightful as ice cream cone cereal treats. These weren't frozen. They were crunchy ice cream cone shells filled with marshmallow cereal bars, usually made from Fruity Pebbles or Rice Krispies, then topped with colorful icing scoops. Sold at bake sales and birthday parties, they mimicked real ice cream cones but were totally shelf-stable. Some had candy drizzle, others used chocolate chips for sprinkles, and a few came with a surprise candy center. The best part? No melting, no mess, just a perfect, handheld sweet. While never mass-produced on a wide scale, they were iconic in school kitchens and homemade treat swaps. As home baking fads shifted and Pinterest-perfect desserts took over, these goofy, brilliant creations quietly disappeared. But ask any 80s kid, and they'll remember them. Whimsical, sweet, and totally creative. They were what happened when moms had cereal, cones, and a mission to impress. Pac-Man pudding pies by Hostess. If you were a kid in the 1980s, there was no cooler dessert in your lunchbox than a Hostess Pac-Man pudding pie. Shaped like the chomping arcade hero himself, these pre-packaged pies were filled with a sweet, creamy vanilla pudding and wrapped in a flaky yellow crust. Some had collectible Pac-Man trivia on the wrappers, and others came in limited edition cherry or chocolate flavors. They were a cross between snack and pop culture icon, a bite of video game glory you could take to school. Hostess released them during the height of Pac-Man mania, and they sold fast. But by the early 1990s, the novelty wore off. The pies vanished quietly, with no fanfare. Still, if you ever unwrapped one at the cafeteria table, you remember that feeling, like you'd scored an extra life. Pac-Man pudding pies weren't just dessert. They were proof you were part of the coolest game in town, one sweet bite at a time. Alf mud pie. Yes, Alf had a pie. And no, it wasn't made from cats. In the late 1980s, at the peak of his sitcom popularity, America's favorite alien life form from Melmac was immortalized in a frozen dessert, the Alf mud pie. This decadent treat featured a cookie crust, layers of chocolate fudge and coffee-flavored ice cream, and whipped topping decorated with an edible cartoon ALF logo. Some versions even included collectible ALF trading cards on the packaging. Sold in grocery freezer aisles, it was marketed as the ultimate family dessert, especially for fans who watched the show religiously every Monday night. But just like ALF's TV run, the dessert didn't last forever. By the early 90s, the show was off-air, and the pie vanished with it. Still, for fans, it wasn't just a dessert. It was part of the weekly ritual. A slice of ALF mud pie was like sharing dessert with a wisecracking alien uncle who, for a while, felt like family.
Which branded or character-themed dessert from the 80s do you miss most? Whether it was ALF, Pac-Man, or something even wilder, we'd love to hear your most nostalgic bites.
S'mores granola bars, original recipe.
Long before granola bars became health food, there was the original s'mores granola bar, and it was dessert disguised as a snack. Chocolate chips, tiny marshmallows, and honey graham clusters all glued together with just enough gooey binding to stick to your fingers. Released in the mid-80s by brands like Quaker, these bars were campfire dreams packed for school lunches. The marshmallows melted slightly if left in a warm backpack, creating gooey pockets of bliss. Some versions were dipped in chocolate on one side, making them even more indulgent. Over time, ingredient lists changed and the bars became healthier, meaning less fun. The new versions are fine, but those who remember the old school ones know. They were basically candy bars in disguise. Sweet, crunchy, and impossible to trade at recess because no one wanted to give theirs up. The original s'mores bar wasn't just a snack. It was an edible adventure that made lunch feel like a backyard bonfire.
If these 70s sweets took you back to avocado kitchens and shag carpet floors, leave a comment. Hit like to keep the sugar-coated memories alive, and subscribe for your next retro treat.